So Gundam Requiem for Vengeance is out, and the response is a little bit on the tepid side, but good news when it comes to the high-grade RX-78 HG Gundam EX. This is a top-tier kit, most definitely. It's super detailed, the build is phenomenal, and so much so I never usually, if ever, make a specific build-only video for a high-grade kit. That is how good it is. It's got an almost full inner frame, the detail is off the charts, there are included stickers and decals in here, and overall Bandai has master-crafted a ridiculously fantastic, over-the-top, brilliant high-grade. Every angle looks great, the detailing looks phenomenal. Personally, I was never really too sold on the Gundam EX design, but this kit definitely does it so well. Anyway, as usual, this video right here was sponsored by those awesome people over at Hobby Link Japan. I will throw a link down in the description. But let's wind on back and check out the build of the Gundam EX. So first up on getting this box opened right here, I'm actually surprised by how much build there was from such a regular sized high grade box. There's a normal-ish amount of plastic in here. That is 8 runners making up the mobile suit itself. We've got one for the beams, one little bit of a kind of flexible runner for the ammo belt, and we do have a sheet of stickers and a sheet of decals. The manual in here is regular enough. Now I will throw up some of the kind of information that is on this, just in case you're not that familiar with Gundam Requiem for Vengeance or the Gundam EX itself. If you haven't watched it or whatever, everything you need to know is pretty much in the manual. Now I started into this build right here in the normal way I usually do, which is starting from the legs up, but it didn't really take me that long to realize that I was seeing a lot of inner frame parts in this kit. Now once again, just in case Requiem for Vengeance is a bit of an entry drug for you into the Gundam world, and you don't know too much about gunpla, usually high-grade kits don't usually have a detailed or full inner structure that the armor attaches onto. It's a kind of a rare occasion in high-grade kits, and this is one of the rare super detailed ones that have one. So I did just start building up this particular inner aspect of the kit just to see how much of this kit right here does have a full frame inside of it. I would say it's pretty much about 90%. The only parts that don't have a frame are the forearms and the head. Besides that, this thing has a whole lot going on inside. I will mention it is a little bit hollow towards the back, inner back, but of course this does leave good space for articulation. Now compared to some other high-grade inner frames that are out there, this one has a lot of nice detail. Up on the shoulders, around the joints in the elbows and the knees, in the midsection we've got some like piping aspects, stuff like that. This is great stuff to detail up if you want to spend the extra time on it. These show through the armor when the kit is finished, and that is some expert design by Bandai. Also in this inner frame, there is some unique build aspects that I've never really seen before. The neck is a very unique style neck I have never ever seen. We've got a red section that kind of slots in from the top, slides forward, and then the actual neck attaches onto it to give you a bit of a hinge and a ball joint up top. Very impressive. Now again, I will stress, this is not the way you will be building the kit if you are building it following the manual. I just kind of like to do this sort of thing to show what is inside for the sake of the video. So next up what I did was, I started to layer on the armor, again starting from the legs up. The armor on this kit is extremely nice. We do have 2 shades of white. One is a darker than usual kind of grey, a light grey but darker than the usual light grey, and a pure white. The actual greebles and printed in molded detail on the surfaces of these armor parts is spectacular, and the way they layer on is extremely nice too. You do have to bend the knee at one point to get a little piece of a section in, and the foot has some nice articulation in it as well when you're building it up, and it does have a grey bottom slotted into the actual red of the foot, which is always something I really do appreciate. So if you throw it into a pose just like this, it just doesn't have red bottoms on its feet. It actually looks like it's got technical, actual, functional aspects down there, and that's cool. So that right there is one of the legs once it is finished, and this is incredibly nice. Now in this video I'm not going to be pan lining up this kit, it's just going to be the straight build. When it does come to the actual review, I will get all of this detail filled in, because we do have some aspects like this little segment right here that really does kind of catch the light and shadows so nicely, depending on how you have the light angled up. The bottom of the feet, like I mentioned, this is done in a nice grey, which just kind of separates everything out nicely and mechanically. We've got a lot of nice moving parts. This little flap right here. The knee bend is extremely nice. So it's from there all the way to there. The technical detail on the knee looking phenomenal. This is a panel liner's dream. Actually, just the way everything's separated up has been expertly executed by Bandai. We also have a nice 2-point leg movie section joint up there. And overall, extremely nice. Also, it is worth noting that the feet are asymmetrical. So this one right here has a bit of a big toe, which is kind of a funny thought. A Gundam with a big toe. A Gundam with a big toe. So yeah, the feet are asymmetrical, which is also a nice little detail as well. Moving up to the waist unit now, and Bandai is really getting really smart with how it's designing certain aspects that don't really need to move. So the vast majority of the inner part of the waist on this is just one large section. Then you kind of just build in the little joint parts for the dropping waist hip joints. And then we do have a few parts that layer up and a little bit of a reliance on a sticker in here. Once again, some stellar detail and color separation with a simple design when it comes to the skirting armors. They're just a single white section held into position with a nice little simple grey locking mechanism. And this right here is what we get when we're finished. The only down point here is that you do require a sticker for some of the color separation on the red section here. I left it off because I'm not sure what I'm going to use just yet. All of these parts are held on so simply but effectively. They all move up so nicely like that. And we do have dropping hips, which is always a major advantage. Although I will mention, they do feel a little bit delicate, but not overly delicate. Like if we get the leg slapped on there, you can really see just how much there is to it. So this can drop down so you can get extra kind of kicks up to the front. Once again, for this particular pose right here, this can't happen if the hips don't drop. So it means you can throw the legs up further for more dynamic posing, which is always awesome. Also, we do have some nice motion in here. It's not the full spin round, so it does limit it to some degree, but technically it does look extremely nice. On to the next bit. Moving up to the torso section of this kit, and this is definitely a return to form for Bandai. This is more like what you would have seen from some of the nicer Witch from Mercury kits, as opposed to what we would have seen by the more basic Gundam Seed Freedom high grades. This builds up in the exact same sort of way we would have seen with, say, something like the Ariel or the Calibarn, with some large, nice grey elements inside of it and some nice layering up little pieces of armor. Everything layers up so perfectly, simply allows a lot of what is on the grey internal structure to show through, and in the end you get an absolutely fantastic looking torso with tons of interior detail and tons of exterior greebles and panel lines. Flipping around to the back of the torso then, we've got the backpack. This might be one of my favorite design aspects of this Gundam. Well, out of the whole Gundam itself, we've got some really cool little aspects that build into it, including two very nice looking thrusters. On top of that, the detail really starts to mount up back here when you get into the various weaponry on the back. We've got a shoulder Gatling gun which builds up with a whole multitude of tiny little parts which attach into the back of the Gundam. Not into the backpack, into the actual back of the torso. We've got a flexible little ammo belt in here which slots through, some nice grey sections which build into the white sections with ridiculous amounts of detail, a cool little drum aspect that builds up out of two parts that the flexible belt attaches into, a part that sandwiches onto that to make sure it stays in position, two little sides for around the sides of the drum, so that does mean when this is finished, the actual drum rotates with the Gatling when it's moved up and down. Over on the other side then we've got a triple beam saber rack, which once again is nice and detailed. We do have 4 beam saber handles with this kit, but you only need 3 to attach into this thing, so that means you do have 1 spare. So this right here is what you end up with once it is finished, and this is ridiculously detailed. I love this, especially the backpack. We've got these moving thrusters right here, which just pivot so simply, but they look incredibly cool. The Gatling is so nicely designed. It can actually pivot side to side like so. It's designed well enough that this doesn't kind of push it back into position, even though it is very springy. It is a C-clip holding it on, so that could be a little bit delicate. But what's really nice is when you do actually bring this back into its kind of position, this drum moves with it. That is very nicely designed. This, however, pops out all the time on me, so I might actually cement this in, but this just swings up over the shoulder like so, and the rack of beam sabers can swing forward one at a time, just like that. Overall though, this is incredibly nice. When you actually bend this forward, you do see into some of the internal structure too, which just looks oh so premium. This is an incredibly well executed torso. Also, neck can move like so, and we do have some unique and beautiful looking shoulder joint sections. They don't look regularly compatible though, but we'll test that another time. So next up in here then we have the arms. Again, like I mentioned, I've built some of the inner frame of this already. Everything besides the forearm on these does have a full inner frame, which is extremely impressive. The parts then just build up with nice small layers of armor. We have an interesting aspect up on the shoulder, which seems to be a kind of rack segment. We've got a nice mix of the grey plastic as well as the white plastic, mixing up the different tones in this. And once again, when you do layer these parts on, you do have some extraordinary grey detail coming through from the inner frame. Again, ridiculously nice. Now, one of the weirdest aspects about this particular design is we do have some atypical gunpla joints here. We don't have the usual ball joint for the wrists. Instead, we've got just this kind of peg instead. It seems to be a 3mm peg, I think. And it attaches into a rotating wrist section. Now, please help me out here. This is driving me mad. This is in at least one other high-grade gunpla, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is. What is a high-grade kit that has this exact wrist joint? It's very similar looking. Even the hands kind of look similar. I need to know what it is because it is absolutely wrecking my head. Yeah, I recall building a high-grade kit sometime recently. By recently, I mean probably in the last 5 years or so, that has wrists like these, as in it pivots just like that and bends like that. It's a very awkward kind of design. It's very structurally strong, you know, but it is a little bit on the awkward side. But besides that, overall, this is nice. You got a nice bend at the elbow like so. Some great technical detail in the elbow right there. We do have rotation up at this point as we normally do. There is a lot of limitation to actually raising the arm up. So from here, it doesn't actually move up. It's connected to the shoulder. So the only thing that moves is this little bit of a ball joint right here because it's trying to maintain this little bit of detail in here. So that is the only real down point to this design. You may not like the wrists either, but it is overall a very nice arm. Again, I love the color combo of like dark gray, light gray, and white. Simple but effective. When it comes to the final aspect of this particular mobile suit, that is the head. One interesting aspect here is you do have 3 choices for the eyes, which is 1, 2, or 3 sensors on. Now, one down point is I found Bandai didn't actually include any pictures of what this looks like with those 3 options, so you can choose one before actually committing. I went with all the lights on just for the sake of it. I will also mention that there is no color separated eyes in this kit, which is a little bit of a step back when it comes to high grade technology, but it kind of makes sense considering there's 3 options and that the eyes are tiny. The rest of the head just kind of builds up in the usual kind of way. It's a lot of detail on here. It's very nice. Everything pieces on nicely. We've got a unique muzzle on this kit, some stickers for the head cameras, and once everything builds up, this right here is what we get. So this right here is definitely a ridiculously unique head design. Of course, it is a little bit of a take on the Gundam EZ8, but I think they kind of over-designed it in a little bit of a funky sort of way. And I don't know, it might just be me, but all I can see with the design of this head is fucking hentai kamen. That is it. That is what I see every time I look at it, so I cannot take it seriously. So for me, it's the weakest point of the design. But anyway, let's put it together. So yeah, everything on this fits absolutely perfectly. Everything is rock solid. The design is incredible. It is kind of interesting that we kind of have this recessed area in the hip unit for this to actually slot into, which does kind of give the old RX 78-2 vibe a bit, where we had that kind of core block or the core fighter, which makes me wonder if this has any kind of technology like that. There is an arm. Again, everything fits ever so nicely and looks pretty cool. Finally then popping the head on, and without a single doubt, this is an incredibly detailed high-grade kit, and that's with color-separated detail, molded detail, greeble detail. It has everything. If you love super detailed kits, this kit has it. Now that does kind of take away from the usual kind of slick, smooth Gundam design we see all of the time. This definitely has more of a kind of over-designedness to it, but again, that may really depend on your own tastes, what you like from it. I love the way this catches the light. It does look incredibly cool. Again, it lost me a little bit at the head, but overall it is a cool kit. It's like somewhere between the Gundam EZ8, and the Atlas Gundam. That is the vibe I'm getting. Moving on to the weapons, so when it comes to the weapons, the beam sabers in here are standard beam saber blades like this. You just cut out and then you'll attach them into the handles later on when you're using them. Next up, moving on to the beam rifle. This is highly detailed. One little bit of a sad aspect is you do need to use a sticker or paint to get the sight section in that typical Gundam sight yellow. I did use the sticker, could be a little bit better, could be a lot worse of course. This is a very nicely designed, well, take on the usual ground Gundam beam rifle. It's just, again, this is a very ground Gundam. It is a RX-78G, so it is a ground Gundam, so that does make sense. That's pretty cool. I just built the hand onto this just for the sake of really not losing it. And this right here is what we've got once it is finished. Again, it is par for the course for the design, I guess, brief of this particular mecha design. It is just like the ground Gundam's rifle, but stripped down armor-wise, which tends to be the overall shtick behind this particular Gundam. Again, lots of nice greebles and design for you to panel line up. The last piece of equipment in here is the shield, which is awesome with one minor disappointment yet again. Overall, it is very, very nice. It's made up in that cool kind of way I've mentioned, where it's got a very large grey section as the core of it, then the colors, which are the white and the red, build up onto it. We have a handle around back. That does mean it does have that kind of, you know, functional aspects around back in grey and armored sections around front in color. The disappointing aspect I mentioned is the fact that the little logo on here is not in yellow. So that does mean you have to use a sticker or paint it. I hate trying to bend stickers around a little thing like that, so I'm just going to leave it as is for now, decide what I'm going to do with it later. But overall, again, very nice. Lots of little details there if you want to kind of paint in some metallics to kind of make it look a little bit more detailed, lots of panel lining opportunities, and overall, this is a very cool shield design. It does hold at a very odd point though, so it does hang quite low in the Gundam, but again, overall cool. I like the way the grey sections here poke out. Instead of just using regular pegs, we got some extra detail by Bandai allowing those parts through. Pretty cool. So anyway, that right there is it for the build. This is an intricate build without a doubt. This has brought high grade to the next level. I mean, when it comes to Gundam Requiem for Vengeance, whether you love it or dislike it, this kit right here is solid. It is beautiful and it is awesome. I've done nothing to it, just get the light right and all of those greebles, all of those panel lines just fill with shadow perfectly, and it just looks stupendous. As far as high-grade builds go, this one really does give you the bang for your buck, because you will be spending a lot more time on this than you would from your average high-grade kit. What can I say? Bandai has definitely raised the bar with this yet again. Anyway, if you do have any questions you'd like answered in the actual review, throw them down there in the comments and I'll try to get to those in the review. I should get the review done in the next couple of days, hopefully. But I guess the kind of preliminary verdict right here is this kit is absolutely spectacular and I highly, highly recommend it. Anyway, as always, this video is sponsored by HobbyLink, Japan, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla builds and reviews, and I'll see you next time. Once again, I kind of finished this video right here without thanking each and every one of you guys for watching my videos. That makes absolutely everything on here possible. If you don't want to support more interesting videos or just to improve the overall quality of the channel, you can help out on the channel memberships and over on Patreon. Patreon is really what does fund any and all improvements quality-wise to this channel. So a special shout out to Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Joe, RG59061, ShadowWolf179, Van Fawn, and Scotty Thomas. Link to join the Patreon and the Discord down there in the description.